Every true crime story begins with a name, a face, and a trail of evidence that leads investigators toward the truth. But what if there's no name, no face, only shadows? This is not the story of a known criminal caught red-handed. This is about someone who walks freely among us. A predator so careful, so calculating, that even with evidence in hand, investigators cannot uncover who they are. The crimes began subtly. At first, authorities dismissed them as isolated incidents. A life cut short in one city. A hauntingly similar case hundreds of miles away. The fingerprints of the same pattern appeared, but the fingerprints themselves belonged to no one. This case challenges everything we believe about justice. If DNA is the gold standard of modern investigation, what happens when the DNA doesn't match anyone alive, or anyone we can trace? For families, it means endless waiting. For investigators, it means chasing shadows. And for us, the public, it means confronting a chilling reality. Some killers may never get caught. On True Crime Hub, we don't just revisit the crime. We explore the failures, the patterns, and the unanswered questions that keep victims voiceless and families in torment. The first known victim was discovered in a quiet suburban neighborhood. A place where doors were left unlocked and neighbors borrowed sugar from each other. Safety was the rule, until it wasn't. The victim was a young woman, her future bright, her life stolen in a way that seemed both precise and personal. Police combed through the scene. They found signs of struggle, traces of DNA, even impressions left on fabric. But when they ran the samples through CODIS, the national database, there was nothing. Not a single match. Detectives reassured the family that they had strong leads, but behind closed doors, they knew the truth. They had a killer's genetic blueprint, but no identity to go with it. And so began a cycle, hope rising with every test, only to be crushed by the silence of results that revealed nothing. Months later, in a different city, another victim appeared. The same method, the same cold precision, and, most disturbingly, the same DNA. Investigators knew instantly. This wasn't coincidence. They were dealing with a serial predator. The killings didn't follow the pattern of typical impulsive murderers. There was no messy frenzy, no sloppy mistakes. Every detail was calculated. The bodies told a story of control, timing, and foresight. Forensic specialists tried everything, cross-referencing military databases, immigration records, even hospitals. The DNA remained a ghost in the system. How does someone leave behind so much evidence and yet remain completely untouchable? That was the question tormenting detectives. And it was only the beginning. For the families left behind, grief turned into torment. Each family believed justice was only a matter of time. After all, science doesn't lie. DNA was supposed to be the smoking gun, the undeniable key to truth. But as years passed, the families realized they were caught in a nightmare where the evidence meant nothing. Parents begged the media to keep their children's names alive. Siblings spoke at vigils, holding candles while whispering prayers for justice. Every plea was met with silence. And silence, in these cases, is not just absence, it is cruelty. The forensic teams coined a chilling term, ghost DNA. Imagine having a fingerprint that doesn't belong to anyone in the world. Imagine a voice recorded on tape, but one no database can identify. That's what ghost DNA is. It wasn't degraded. It wasn't contaminated. It was real, strong, and consistent. Yet it belonged to no one that the system could find. Some experts began to their eyes. Could this killer be living under a stolen identity? Or worse, was the DNA somehow shielded, altered, or part of a lineage outside all known records? The thought sent shivers down even the most seasoned investigators. Who was this phantom? Profilers began to construct a psychological sketch. This was no opportunist. This was someone who hunted deliberately, choosing victims carefully. Someone disciplined enough to strike in different cities, across state lines, without leaving a trace of their true self. They blended into society. Perhaps they worked a normal job, shook hands with co-workers, smiled at neighbors. But behind closed doors, they were perfecting the art of invisibility. The scariest predators are not the ones who hide in shadows. They are the ones who walk among us, unnoticed. Leads poured in from the public. Tip lines lit up with theories. A suspicious neighbor. A co-worker who vanished after payday. A stranger seen lurking near a victim's house. But every lead dissolved under scrutiny. Detectives followed trails for weeks, sometimes months, only to hit dead ends. The killer wasn't just careful, they were adaptive. They seemed to anticipate investigative moves before they were made. One detective, exhausted, confided. It's like chasing a ghost who's always one step ahead. You see the footprints, but never the person. With no match in physical databases, investigators turned to the digital world. They uploaded genetic sequences to genealogy sites. They combed through family trees, searching for distant relatives. Every new development in forensic genealogy sparked hope. And yet, nothing. Not a single family connection strong enough to narrow down a suspect. The killer's digital footprint was just as invisible as their physical one. No online taunts, no cryptic messages, no self-incriminating behavior. This was someone who not only killed in silence but lived in silence. As more bodies surfaced, public fear turned into panic. Media headlines screamed of a faceless killer. Parents locked their doors. Communities stopped trusting strangers. The case was no longer just about solving crimes. It was about restoring a sense of safety that had been shattered. But how do you protect yourself from someone who could be anyone? Every passerby became a suspect in the public's eye. Paranoia spread faster than facts. And that's exactly what the killer seemed to want. What makes this story truly terrifying is not just the crimes, but the absence of history. Most killers leave a trail. Petty crimes in their youth, fights at school, brushes with the law. But this one? Nothing. No arrests. No documented incidents. No whispers of abuse or violence in their past. It's as if the killer materialized fully formed, a predator without a childhood, a history, or a paper trail. And that raises a haunting question. Did this person spend their whole life preparing to be invisible? At True Crime Hub, we dig deeper than just the crime. We explore what it means when the system designed to protect us can't identify the very person responsible for taking lives. Stay with us as we continue unraveling the story in the next part. Detectives quietly admitted something painful. Mistakes were made early on. Evidence from the first crime scene wasn't processed as quickly as it should have been. Leads that might have uncovered a suspect were lost to time. By the time patterns were recognized, the killer had already moved across states, leaving law enforcement scrambling to connect dots across jurisdictions. This wasn't just a predator's cunning, it was a system's failure. And every missed opportunity was another door closed, another family left without answers. Entire communities were scarred by these killings. In neighborhoods once filled with block parties and late-night walks, people now lived behind locked doors. Curtains were drawn, streets grew quiet, and the sense of safety evaporated. The families of victims weren't just grieving, they were isolated. Many felt their loved ones had become statistics, their cases lost in a sea of red tape. Survivors described the same haunting thought. The killer could still be living here, among us, blending in, unnoticed. FBI profilers, geneticists, and criminologists all took turns analyzing the case. Some argued the killer was military trained, explaining the discipline and mobility. Others believed they were a drifter, using anonymity as a weapon. But one consensus emerged. This was someone highly intelligent, someone who studied not only how to kill, but how to avoid capture. A predator who doesn't just commit crimes, but studies the science of evasion. As the years went on, the killer's methods began to change. The earliest crimes bore traces of error, small mistakes, partial prints, imperfect timing. But later crimes, perfectly executed. It was as though the killer was refining their craft, learning from each act, adapting faster than investigators could respond. This wasn't just a murderer, it was a student of crime. And their lessons came at the cost of human lives. With pressure mounting, authorities arrested several individuals over the years. Some were local troublemakers, others were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. For weeks, families believed justice had been served. But one by one, those suspects were cleared when DNA evidence proved they weren't the killer. Each wrongful arrest wasn't just a mistake, it was a cruel reopening of wounds for families desperate for closure. The true killer, meanwhile, remained free, perhaps even watching news reports of innocent people being blamed in their place. Then came a chilling possibility. What if this killer wasn't bound by one country? Interpol began sharing data, searching for matching cases overseas. Shockingly, several unsolved crimes in Europe and Asia bore striking similarities. Same method, same traces of ghost DNA. Could this predator be a traveler, slipping across borders as easily as they slipped past police? If true, the scope of their crimes was far larger than anyone imagined. Forensic technology kept advancing. New tools like genetic genealogy, AI crime scene reconstruction, and familial DNA tracing promised breakthroughs. Investigators clung to hope that one day, technology would expose the ghost. But every attempt ended the same way: silence. The DNA was still unmatched, the digital trail still invisible. It was a chilling reminder that technology is only as powerful as the data it holds. And this killer existed outside that data. With no capture, theories flourished. Medium black circles, some believed the killer was already dead, their identity buried with them. Medium black circle, others thought they might be in prison under a different name, shielded from discovery. Medium black circle and the darkest theory, that the killer was someone respected, perhaps even a figure of authority, who knew exactly how investigations worked. Each theory brought both hope and horror. Hope that an answer existed. Horror that the truth might be closer than anyone realized. Years stretched into decades. Families refused to give up. They held vigils, pressed lawmakers for funding, begged media outlets to keep their loved ones' names alive. They weren't just fighting for justice, they were fighting against time. For every day that passed, evidence degraded, witnesses faded, and memories blurred. Yet their determination never wavered, because giving up meant letting the killer win. And so we returned to the haunting reality. This predator left behind DNA, but no name. Evidence, but no identity. Victims, but no justice. The case remains open, not cold, but burning with unanswered questions. Why hasn't this killer been caught? Because they are everything investigators fear most: adaptable, invisible, and patient. A ghost with blood on their hands, who may still be out there. For families, closure may never come. For investigators, the hunt continues. And for us, the public, we are left with a chilling truth. Sometimes, justice is not guaranteed. Here on True Crime Hub, we refuse to let these stories fade. Because even if the killer may never get caught, the victims deserve to be remembered. If you believe these victims deserve their stories told, please like, share, and subscribe. By keeping their names alive, we remind the world that even in the face of silence, justice must be pursued.